All right, I think we can get started. So, hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our final Beyond Compliance roundtable. We're glad you're joining us for this Ask Us Anything session. I should say, quick disclaimer: when we say Ask Us Anything, we do mean within the realm of pharmaceutical and therapeutic quality. So things like meaning of life, what stock options to buy in 2024. We can't help you with that, but anything else within the realm of the industry, this is your chance to get your questions answered by our panelists. We have three seasoned industry experts who I will introduce in a second. My name's Alex and I'll be your moderator for this session. I'm sure you guys have been in our other sessions, so you probably know this already, but this session is recorded. You'll receive a follow-up email aiming to get that out to you tomorrow with the resources and the recording of this session for you to refer back to. And just a quick thank you to our co-sponsor for this 3-day event. Beyond Compliance is almost finished. We have one more session after this one, and it wouldn't have been possible without our co-sponsors, Qualistry, who work with us to offer really great knowledge pack webinars to keep pharma professionals like you guys in the loop about the latest industry trends and developments. So big thank you to Jan and the Qualistry team for supporting us over the last few days. We really appreciate it. Some quick housekeeping. Again, you're probably already familiar with this right now. We're on day 3, but obviously the format of this is Ask Us Anything. So I encourage you to drop your questions in the Q&A. We do have some pre-submitted questions, which we'll be starting with from the people who filled in the Google form that was emailed to you when you signed up. So thanks to the people that did that, and we will get around to those questions first. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel for today. So first up is Bennett. Bennett Clusas is the Quality Assurance Specialist at lentiviral vector manufacturer Vector Biomed, headquartered in Maryland. He's responsible for the implementation and maintenance of their cutting-edge electronic quality management system, which you'll be hearing more about in our next session. If you just tuned into our ICHQ 10 session, you'll already be familiar with Alex Hall, another Brit called Alex, just to keep you on your toes for this session. Alex entered the pharma industry in 1990. She's a qualified person. She's worked as a QP assessor for the Royal Society of Chemistry here in the UK for over 9 years, and she now leads the pharma training expert team at QP Quandary. And last but certainly not least, we have Kelly Stanton, who has over 20 years of pharma and med device quality leadership experience. She's worked at Abbott, Sanders, Cochlear, and more. And she's currently the head of quality systems improvement for Cordon Pharma, who develop and make APIs, excipients, packaging, and more from their Colorado HQ. So we've got that out of the way. I've introduced our panelists, and we have just under 30 minutes, so please get your questions in. I'd actually like to start with a question for you, Alex, which is just something we didn't get a chance to address in our ICHQ 10 session just now. We did run out of time since we had so many questions, but the question was, what would you identify as possible challenges and considerations for a pharmaceutical company trying to implement ICHQ 10 or a pharmaceutical quality system in general? And I'll just paste that in the Q&A session and share it so you can see it on screen.
So in terms of challenges, your challenge is to map the entire process, map your manufacturing, supply chain, all of your activities, and then to work your quality system to manage within those processes. And as I said in the presentation earlier, try not to overcomplicate things, because when you're first starting out as a business, you probably don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut, as we say in the UK. You don't need absolutely everything to have a full electronic system. However, as you grow, you need to make sure it's scalable. And that's a huge challenge for any pharmaceutical company. And it gets even worse when you start talking mergers and acquisitions. So for me, that's the biggest challenge. When you consider what you're doing, think of your quality system as your infrastructure. Okay, it's like your road system. So what you in quality are doing is you're putting a system in place for your users to use. It shouldn't be held within your quality organization and your quality guys are the only people who can use it. It should be usable and accessible to everybody within the organization, because they're the ones who are going to have to drive the cars and the lorries and whatever else is using that infrastructure. So all of the rules, all of the decision points need to be clear. Do you have traffic lights and stops at this point? Is there a rule about which way you can route something through? And if you think about it like that, for me, and that would be extremely useful in terms of having a map of your system and explaining it to people who are not quality professionals, but who need to use the system. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Great answer, Alex. Thank you very much for kicking us off with that. Yeah, so something from the last session which I thought we should briefly cover. So thank you. Next question is around AI. If you had AI on your event bingo, then you can tick that off now. It does seem to be absolutely everywhere these days, and we do have a question about it. Kelly, I wonder if you could take this one. Again, I will paste this in the Q&A and share it right now. It's what challenges do you think AI brings, and how do you think API will impact things in the pharma industry, like data integrity, validation, drug manufacturing, and so on?
Well, that's an interesting one. I think AI is all the buzz. It's all over the news. It's all we hear about these days is that we want to use AI to help us do everything better. And I think it is an amazing technology. And a way certainly for computers to do things that we can't do and do it faster. What's key about AI is not the technology itself, but the data that you use to train the model. And so how it impacts things like data integrity, validation, manufacturing, etc. There is an assumption there that you have enough well-controlled, well-validated data behind it to train it. And so I think if you're applying it too early, it's not going to help you. It's not going to be useful. I think it can bias you in the wrong directions. And so I think it has to be applied carefully, thoughtfully, with a lot of controls. And I think the people that use it need to know the processes well enough to be able to recognize whether or not the system is showing you the right things before you just turn it loose in your systems. So I would say it's great and it's powerful, and it needs to be used very, very carefully and implemented under great control.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I've actually found a similar thing, Kelly, in my role. So for those of you who don't know, I help look after the Qualio blog, producing quality management content for our website visitors to read. And I did get a question, how will AI impact that? Can I just start automating blog posts? And I thought, oh, great, I should give it a try and put some things in ChatGPT, and the details were just not right, just not up to date, not applicable. And in our industry, there is no room for that kind of room for error. So it's a really interesting point, which I've certainly found as well. Benny, we do have one last pre-submitted question before I go on to our live questions, because we've got a few ones coming in live now. Somebody's asked, data integrity is high on our priority list for 2024. How do we even begin auditing our processes to find priority areas to work on?
So when you're looking to begin finding priority areas to work on, I think one of the most important things to pull in is ideas of management review meetings, going into your governance areas. You need to pull numbers because those are going to be the basis of your changes. So common ones I've used in the past involve querying your deviation or kappa systems and seeing, okay, where are the issues occurring? What is the relatedness of all of these events? Are they coming down to an initial one, and you use that to pick your area to audit? And your audit is going to be consisting of, hey, what's the level of compliance with these processes? What are the pain points with these processes? And from understanding those pain points, you begin to find which things you can address first, your low-hanging fruit, your just do it tasks. Whereas you'll also find your bigger problems that need to be addressed more long-term. And in all of this, you need to be careful before you just start going make changes, because people have an eagerness to say, yes, we're improving our processes. Yes, we're growing, we're doing these things, but you have to make sure you're not falling into the really tampering trap, where in your efforts to make changes, you've actually lowered your overall state of control. So find your areas by understanding your current key performance indicators and metrics. Audit those areas with an understanding of what can easily be resolved versus what needs consideration. And then make sure your changes are being well vetted and implemented, because it's not enough to just make a change. You have to follow through on the effectiveness of it and see that it's actually producing benefit, rather than lowering the consistency of your ability to get work done. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question, but you can then take all those points and put them against your various data integrity points of, hey, how hard was it for me to retrieve this information? And in the next session, we're talking about selecting EQMSs. We're going to go through a bit more of those desirable qualities. Big one for me is, if y'all have ever heard of Alcoa++, those are those traits you start to assess your ability to gather data based off of. And how easy was it? What was the compliance like?
Great answer. Thank you, Bennett. So we can start to move on to some of the live questions now, and I'm going to start with Renata's question. Alex, I wonder if you would be okay to take this one. Here it is. What are some important KPIs in GDP quality organizations? In GDP that quality organizations tend to miss in your experience?
So with GDP, we're looking for good distribution practice. And when we're looking at good distribution practice, we have certain things that we need to be keeping an eye on, which are very much around the control of where our product has gone and how our product has been handled. So very basics for me in terms of key performance indicators will be that we keep an eye on all excursions in temperature and conditions, any conditions that are applicable to the product. But that's not the only thing that's important about the product, because certainly our GDPs require us to have mapped our processes. And as a qualified person, I'm expected to know that our product has gone via a qualified route. So any excursion of the routing, which can happen, as I said earlier, we can have product that was supposed to fly directly from India to the UK, and somehow it's stopped off and been deplaned and replaned, and that can cause all sorts of problems with temperature monitors being moved around and what have you. So any of those need to be tracked and trended. We also need to be looking at our distribution from our final product to our final customer, and any errors of those, any returns to warehouse, and the reasons for those returns. It's something that we measure and track in our annual product quality review. And I recently had an example where there was a product where we had hundreds of returns of this particular product with no comment next to it as to the reason why. So I wouldn't sign it off. I said, look, this is unacceptable. Why are there hundreds of returns for this particular product? And it turned out perfectly good reason. The customer had gone bankrupt and had returned all the product that they had from us. So it's one customer, but a good reason. But we need to know why things are coming back, what has happened to that, especially if we're going to return those products to the supply chain, because there's all sorts of things we need to be checking if we do that. There's a very strict criteria for returning those. And as for any quality system, all of your quality system metrics need to be assessed. So all of your deviations, all of your actions being completed on time, all of those need to be looked at as well.
Great, thank you for that really comprehensive answer, Alex. Our next question is around careers. So this might be a good one to round robin. I wonder if you could begin answering this one, Kelly, and then we'll work around to Bennett and back to Alex again. The question is as follows. What was your entry position into the pharma quality arena? Would the panelists briefly describe the career ladder they took to reach their present position? Is that a dog I can hear, Kelly?
Yep, sorry. Puppy on the floor with the squeaker. I started off my career in this industry as a bench chemist, actually. My background, my college degree's in biology and chemistry, and I got a job in a lab at Abbott, actually, doing QC chemistry testing. I got bored with that actually very quickly because it's kind of the same thing over and over all the time. So I worked my way over into the validation support group, which sort of opened up the whole world of validations. So process, mixed time, hold time cleaning, nitrogen headspace testing in an aseptic processing facility. So that really got exciting very quickly. And from there off into validation support, engineering, I figured out I probably should have gotten an engineering degree instead of a biology degree. I love that side of the industry. So I spent quite a few years supporting commercial manufacturing as a validation engineer, and then through job change ended up on the med device side. Quality engineering, really got to learn quality systems. That's where I got exposed to ISO. And so I love the ICH standards because in pharma on FDA side, of course, 210 and 211, I like to describe them as sort of the interpretive dance of regulations. They're not so clear, but ISO and ICH are very clear, right? The way that they're laid out, so much easier to follow. And so from there, kind of went off into supporting startups and doing quality systems, and got to do a lot more in the earlier phases, development work, and have really sort of gotten to a place where I've enjoyed helping figuring out how to scale quality systems appropriately, right? So when you're working in those early phases, what do you actually need? And I love Alex's comment about, figuring out how to set up a quality system so that it will scale. And now where I'm at here at Corden, it's been interesting because this is a good example of they grew very fast and the systems didn't necessarily scale, right? When you grow quickly, you kind of don't take the time necessarily, you're just trying to keep up. So now we're doing a lot of projects to help figure out where we can optimize because we continue to grow. But it's all of that experience across all the different areas of manufacturing that are making it possible for me to look at all the different areas and know, right, where I can trim versus where we need to be more robust, keeping data integrity in mind as we're doing all of this, right? You've got a nice broad look at all of the systems with all the years. So it's kind of been a meandering across lots of places, but it's been a lot of fun to get to dabble in all of those things and spend some time supporting international regs as well. So I can keep that in mind too, in my creativity in those systems. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, it sounds like maybe the best way to learn is to keep meandering across different companies. So it sounds like you've had exposure to lots of different areas. Bennett, how about you?
For me, really entering the farm quality arena, I mean, I started out here in the Maryland biotech industry with Lonza, working for their cell and gene therapy CDMO operation. And from that position, I was actually initially a technical writer. and worked within the engineering group for the team, medical science and tech engineers, and started to really take more of a role in understanding these different systems and just trying to learn from folks. And the interesting thing is, kind of opposed to Kelly's ability to meander through companies, which sounds awesome. Lonza was just a site of so many different functions. We had 3 different functions. So it wasn't just cell and gene therapy. It was media production operations. It was LAL, which is used in the manufacture of endotoxin testing. And you got to see medical device, cell and gene therapy, and one of these high throughput products all being manufactured in the same place, and how they all sort of approached their quality requirements differently. So from the technical writing and engineering group, I ended up doing more and more work with manufacturing teams and sort of being the, hey, you can translate a quality system for us. So can you help us comply with this? And that became my role as a specialist on those teams until I ended up moving on from Lonza when they shifted functions out to New Hampshire, Texas, and the old pharmaceutical facility out in the Netherlands. And what I can say is it was a fantastic experience. And then the next one, I really got to focus down into my interest in quality systems and how we drive excellence on the manufacturing floor. And a few positions later, here I am with Vector working as quality, setting up our EQMS.
Fantastic. And we'll obviously hear a little bit more about that from you at our next session. Alex, how about you? Really, really briefly, could you describe how you got into the pharma quality arena and what you've learned along the way?
The short story is by accident. I actually, and some of you not in the UK might not understand this, but I left school at 16. I had some O-levels, and I went and worked in a laboratory analysing food. I sort of trundled along doing that. I did additional education part-time while I was working. Moved through a couple of jobs that way, working for a supermarket. Did some microbiology, did some analytical chemistry, lots of wet chemistry. It was great fun. All sorts of disgusting things going on. And I started working for a pharmaceutical company, but on their food side, and moved into the pharma side whilst I was doing that. So it really is very much by accident. And got my first degree, took me 10 years, and then decided to go for the QP status, which gave me the second degree and took me into what I do in terms of helping QPs get their qualifications and being trained. And once I'd sort of stopped doing that, I started my own company. So I sort of, meandered my way through, learnt a lot on the way, and it kind of became an expert in QPs. Just happened by accident.
It seems to happen a lot, that, Alex. I mean, I've been in the industry for a few years now, and a lot of quality professionals say that they kind of fell into it, and it's not really a discipline that you can study at many universities or colleges, for instance. Do you think that should change? Do you think it should be a path that's laid out more, perhaps, for people who would have an interest in it earlier in life?
Possibly, yes. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got a few more questions coming in, about 5 minutes to go. So we'll try and get through as many as we can. Next question is from Sean. I don't know who wants to take this one, but here goes. In an organization with both GCP and GMP departments, where the GCP has auditors and GMP has QPs, but no auditors, is it acceptable for GCP auditors to conduct supplier audits, or does it have to be the GMP QP? Who wants to take this one?
Well, I think it's aimed at me, isn't it?
I think so. And they spell organisation with an S, so I think they're in our country as well. So
I think so. They could be in Europe with QPs. So this one, because I did smile when I saw this one. What I would say is it depends, and that is the standard QP answer. The thing is that I would be very surprised if your GMP organisation has no auditors. I'm assuming that your QPs are seen as your auditors, And yes, your GCP guys can audit as long as they are trained in GMP. So if you look at any of the guidance from Udrelex, you will see that all your audit reports need to be verified and that you will need the CV of the auditor who has done the audit, and that needs to be able to show that they have suitable training and experience of GMP. So it depends is the answer. As long as your GCP auditors have the right background and experience, why not?
Okay, thank you. And a really big question here to perhaps round us off, if we again round robin this one. Do you want to begin with this one, Bennett? Here goes. What's the biggest challenge for a quality manager?
I honestly think one of the biggest things for being a quality manager is basically under being able to transition not only between functions, but being able to manage a system for all these different groups where each group has different sets of needs. So short on that one, but honestly, I think it's keeping consistency across groups. Everybody's important. Everybody gets their time.
Short and to the point. I like it. Kelly, how about you?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. I think for me, this one also feels a little bit like it depends, right? I think early in a company's journey, it's getting the system mature enough to have it all functioning well together. Because it's a good quality system is a giant spider web, right? There's lots of pieces that all have to work together. And so getting all of those pieces really functioning well so that you have a great view across the entirety of the system is hard. And it takes a while. And so you'll find yourself kind of focusing over here and then, oh, there's a fire over here. So now you got to go focus over here for a while. And so it can feel a little bit like whack-a-mole. So, I've spent a lot of time recently in kind of early systems. And so I would say that's a challenge. There in bigger, more established systems, the challenge becomes different. The whack-a-moles get different. Yeah, I would say getting to that place where you've got good visibility across the whole thing is a challenge for sure.
Alex, how about you?
Mine is really two sides of the same coin. We've always done it this way. And, well, we tried it and it didn't work. That's it.
In the sense of getting stuck in a rut and being afraid to innovate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. A couple more questions. We have one around trending of EM data here. Don't know who wants to take this one. Is it justifiable to make trending of EM data for a few days or months? I'm not sure who wants to take this one.
Well, I can say it's not a trend if you don't look at it over time. So you've got to look at it over time. You're not going to see trends. It's interesting. I've seen where people were doing annual reports of certain kinds of data, and that felt like it was too long. So then they moved it into quarterly. And then the next finding they got was, well, quarterly wasn't, you weren't looking at a big enough data set to then see the trends over time, right? So with environmental monitoring, you're going to see variations based on the time of the year, the seasons, right? Like there's all sorts of different situations in that. So you have to with environmental in particular. I would say this is also true of like your water systems, for example. If you've got purified water systems, same story. You've got to look at them on the regular, so daily, look at your data points, but then you've got to back out that lens and look at the bigger picture over time, or you're not going to see trends. So.
Great answer, thank you. I think we have time for one last question. Benny, I will pass this one over to you if that's okay. Nice broad question from Dr. Khan, which is, what are the major areas influencing therapeutic quality, despite, I think it means other than GMP compliance?
And I'd invite the others to chime in on this one. I mean, in terms of the areas influencing therapeutic quality, despite GMP compliance, I think a lot of it still comes down to what is the approach for bringing things to market. There's always a push to make things cost less and go faster. And those are the forces that GMP compliance butts up against the most, is that drive to always do less and get more out of it. So you're looking at your regular news stories, you're looking at trends in you're looking at trends as things come up. I mean, we go back to COVID and you see stories coming out about particular manufacturers, and suddenly everybody's got a big focus on, oh, how is our such and such system? I'm going to say, like, how is our deviation and investigation system running? Because now all eyes are on this after this one facility experienced something. Whereas if it's going to those long-standing ones, it's always going to be, what does it cost to be quality, not just in money, but in time.
Thank you. Anything to add, Kelly? We've got about a minute left before I move on to the last slide.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what things are key to your process, right? What things are critical. Somebody asked a question about, is auditing supplier essential for the qualification of the supplier? Well, are you making all your components in-house, or are you reliant on upstream suppliers? Are you reliant on a contract manufacturer, or do you control all of those things, right? So, that those are absolutely areas that influence your quality. If you don't have direct control over those things, then that's a major area of influence. And by golly, you'd better be auditing those suppliers, right? Because if you don't have direct control over that and someone else does not absolve you of the responsibility for quality of those parts. And we see more and more scrutiny of that, especially, FDA, and I'm sure Alex could probably speak to what's going on in Europe around those kinds of things. But, one of the major holdups to new drug approvals we're seeing in this country right now is contract manufacturing organizations are getting hammered. Drugs are coming off of emergency use authorization, right? COVID is over-ish in this country. And now you're having to go through the approval process. Everybody was outsourcing their manufacturing. They don't necessarily understand what that means, right? And they're not looking hard enough at those relationships. They're not auditing their upstream suppliers and going, oh, wait a minute, these guys have quality problems. And now they can't distribute those products anymore, right? So where you have handoffs in your supply chain, or where you are reliant on someone else's quality system for the control and the quality of those products you are accepting, you better have a handle on what that looks like. And if you haven't audited them and you haven't been on site, you don't know. Just because they say they're doing it, nope, not good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a great point to end on. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Yeah.
And thank you to all three of our panelists. That we're just about at the top of the hour now, just over. So we will bring an end to our final Beyond Compliance Roundtable and say thank you to our panelists, our sponsors, and obviously to you guys, our attendees, everyone who took the time out of the day, wherever you are in the world, to commit to going beyond compliance with us. So we really appreciate it. As you probably know, this session has been recorded like all the others, so you'll receive a follow-up email with the recording really soon, and you'll receive a certificate for attending this webinar as well in the next 24 hours. So please feel free to share those certificates online, tag Qualio and Qualistreet on LinkedIn. We always love to see that after our events. And as a quick reminder, Alex, Bennett and Kelly have been and will be presenting our other webinar. So Alex led our first session today on ICHQ 10. Kelly was in 2 events yesterday, so a big thank you to you, Kelly. And Bennett will be walking you through how to optimize and digitize your quality management system in our next and final session, which is how to build a paperless therapeutic quality management system. So I think all that's left to say is we do really appreciate your feedback. So I'm about to launch, it's already been launched by one of my colleagues, a quick survey. So we encourage you to fill that in really quickly. And we hope to see you in our next session with Bennett on going paperless. Big thank you to our panelists. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.